What if Gus Van Sant made a slasher movie? I feel like that was the central question that was asked of In a Violent Nature. In a Violent Nature is a movie about a cursed killer who rises from the grave in order to hunt down the perpetrator of his stolen locket. Now, the funny thing about this movie is that that is not only the log line for the film, it's also the synopsis and the entire plot. It's crazy that there isn't really much to say about this movie. Like, knowing its premise is knowing the movie. It's a typical 80s slasher style movie, but we follow the killer from his rise from the grave all the way through to all of his kills. So the typical scenes that you would normally see in a standard slasher movie just played from the other side. Now, they do placate the audience with some story. There's a story about the killer John, who was a kid and was killed like 70 years ago, and the legend says that the disturbance of his locket brings him back from the dead for revenge. Now, there is some young people that show up and take the locket, and hilarity ensues. Now, this movie has one thing, one central gimmick, and it's going to ride that out to the end come hell or high water. I mean, it's different, that's for sure. Like, it's an interesting experiment, and it's kind of clever seeing the parts that we don't normally see in a typical slasher movie. But a clever idea does not necessarily make a good movie. Because in the end, this is really just a 90-minute gimmick. Now, technically, there are people in this movie, but if you're looking for characters, you won't find any here. There are no characters in this movie. Now, I'll tell you what there's a lot of: walking. Lots of long behind the back tracking shots, watching someone walk for like 2 minutes straight, or wide, static, flat angles, no music, no atmosphere, no sense of drama or mood. Now you might be wondering, well, how do you inject tension and suspense into a movie if you're following the villain around the whole time? Well, the short answer is you don't. Like, this is the most cold, heartless, proscenium way to watch a horror movie. Like, imagine stripping out all the style and components of a horror movie, the acting, the camera angles, the music, the lighting, and just watching someone get killed in a static wide shot over and over. Now, this is to throw no shade at the special effects. The special effects are fantastic, and the kills are inventive and very well done. But that's sort of all it is. Now, of course, I'm half joking when I say there are no characters. There are. I mean, you can see them in the credits. But really, they're just characterizations of people. Like, the villain might as well just be a robot, and the victims are just victims with the barest of dialogue in order to just not have silent scenes. I mean, it really felt like there was no actual scenes here, just the kills and the lead up to each one. Once you get by the gimmick of following the killer, there's just not much left. You would never really need to watch this movie more than once. Like, just watch a supercut of all the kills, and you basically would get the same out of it as if you sat through the whole movie without the tedium of the in-between stuff. Now, I can appreciate the patience here to make this film and the choice to go the exact opposite of what a jump scare would be. But if you take away the inventive kills in this movie, I just don't know what you have. Now, I applaud that this movie got made. I always appreciate different takes on things and experimentation. Kudos for getting this movie out and in the theaters. The world of film's a better place for this having gotten out there. But I can't call it a good movie. It's a clever idea that works for a bit as a concept, and the kills are fun to watch, but that's kind of it. And I'm all for slow burn. But there are sequences here that take so long to get somewhere that I started to think it was just done in order to pad the runtime. It's kind of unfortunate because I think this movie would have been so much more interesting if instead of doing this with the entire movie, but to show the slasher movie, the more traditional slasher movie angle for the first half, and then maybe rewind, and then we see what the killer was doing the entire time in the second. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. You also get a chance to kind of know some of these people as characters versus just the ultimate fodder that they are now as they kind of pop in periodically as the killer is about to kill them. Now, I know there is a lot of jokes about thin characters in movies like Friday the 13th franchises and such, But man, this is taken to such an extreme, it's ridiculous. I think about movies like The Curse of Leslie Vernon or One Cut of the Dead, who start with a very clever concept, but then they add to it and build upon that in order to create what I would call like a full movie. Instead of this, which kind of stops at the, hey, what if we did this idea level? And that's kind of about it. There's really no point in talking about much else. The acting, I mean, there really isn't much here, and everyone is a cardboard cutout of a character anyway. There's no mood or atmosphere, tension or suspense, and it takes forever to do anything. But I have to commend the filmmaker for doing something different, even if what is different I didn't enjoy. And I will pull back from saying this is a bad movie, because it's not. There is clearly a lot of craft and discipline here. But I also can't recommend it outside of seeing a couple of the kills and chuckling a few times over the concept. So I want to do a weird thing. I'm going to give this a split rating. As a movie, I would rate this a C as far as just my overall enjoyment of it. Conceptually, I'd give it an A. But I'm really curious, how did you feel about this movie?